Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be talking about the 8.23 AD Carry tier list. If you haven't checked out my support tier list, be sure to check that out as well. You can find a link in the Google Doc where there's a link to that in the description. If you don't have time to watch the whole thing, you can also find timestamps in the description. And if you just kind of want to read along, you can also access the Google Doc in the description as well. And with each entry, I'm going to have a link to each champion and some recommended items, recommended runes, and then a 5-point rating system. One being the champion is one of the best champions in that role at that specific task, and or 1 is one of the worst champions rather, and 5 is one of the best champions. So Lucian, for example, as a 4 in lane pressure, and lane pressure is just how likely is the champion able to push the wave, able to get an advantage in lane, bully people out, get priority. Kill threat is how likely is the champion able to get a kill in the lane. Safety is how safe is the champion from ganks, how well can they position in team fights. Scaling is how well does the champion perform over time, and then reliability is how likely is it that you can put out a consistent performance on the champion. So part of that is how difficult is the champion mechanically to play, how difficult are the decisions you have to make, but then also how many counters are there to this champion in the meta. Can you get completely shut out if you're behind? Can you get shut out if they have certain picks on the enemy team? Does the champion play well with picks that are going to be common on your team? So that's how that works. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. So this is for patch 8.23. So this is the preseason. A couple of things changed in terms of tower priority. I talked about this in my patch notes video and the support video. But basically how that pertains to AD carry is you really want champions that can threaten towers. Hey, thanks so much for the sub, Tim. I appreciate it. You really want champions that can threaten towers, that can bully people out, get advantages early. Because now every time you get one of those plates off of a tower, which is 1,000 health, then it gives you 160 gold. So if you're the first, if you can crack all 5 of those plates and get the first tower with the first tower bonus, it's 1450 gold, which is astronomically large, right? Like that's almost triple what it was before. Not quite, but it's approaching triple what first tower blood was before. So it's really, really important. And if you have time left over, so the plates fall off at 14 minutes, but if you are able to take all of your plates by like 10 minutes, and then you're able to like rotate mid and start getting plates off of that, then you get even more gold. So the faster you can take down towers, the better it's going to be. So that means that siege champions like Caitlyn, like Sivir are going to rise up a little bit in priority, and other champions that are really terrible at siege like Vayne are going to fall down quite a bit in priority. So that's probably the #1 influencer here. Another thing to keep in mind is that enchanters are probably going to be back in a big way. They have been back statistically in this patch, and there's several reasons for that I talk about in the support tier list video. Part of that, though, is you want ranged champions because ranged champions can attack towers better. So champions that play well with Ardent Sensor in particular are going to be a lot stronger. So champions like Lucian, even though he has a shorter range, he still can bully out early game. He's extremely strong with Nami, who I think is one of the best supports right now. He's good with anyone that's going to get Ardent Sensor and anyone that has any special on-hit effects that he can proc with his double tap. So Nami is the most conspicuous one, but he still works really well with Braum, although I don't expect to see a ton of Braum right now. It's not quite the meta for him, but anyone that has those types of things, Lucian's going to be good with. So he's still going to be a pretty strong pick. But that's the biggest stuff that's going to decide it. I think that's about it. I'm trying to remember from the patch notes. Bounty gold changed around a lot, so it's more important to get towers. It's more important to get dragons. Champions that can take dragons really quickly are definitely a huge boon as well, because dragons are more powerful, especially the first ones. And if you can get priority in your lane, bot lane, push it forward, and then go contest those dragons and get them quickly, then that's going to be very effective. So Lucian, very good at taking dragons as well. Anyone that has Blade of the Ruined King is going to be pretty good versus dragons because they're going to do that percentage health damage, especially if they can double proc it like Lucian with his 2 auto attacks. So let's go ahead and get in here. So since we talked about Lucian, pretty clear, Lucian's still going to be a winner. He's picked a ton in high level play. My wife's cheering over there. Picked a ton in high-level play. Very good in solo queue in general. And there's a few things that make Lucian stand out above other champions. And I think most people are probably familiar with these mechanics by now. But press the attack works extremely well with him because he can trigger it so quickly. He just hits them with like 1 Q and then his double attack and boom, there it is. So it does a lot of extra damage for you, but it also does a lot of extra damage for your team when you're trying to pick off one person, because remember, it increases the damage by 12% on everybody that hits him, not just Lucian. So if they do happen to have a tank on their team, then he's pretty decent at shredding down tanks because he'll get Blade, which double procs also Blade of the Ruined King. Each one of his shots triggers Blade of the Ruined King, so that's really good. And then it'll trigger press the attack, which does extra damage to tanks, and then he often gets Black Cleaver as well, and so he's going to be shredding all of the armor off the tank's tool. Not all of it, but 30% of it, because each one of his damaging attacks also puts another stack of Black Cleaver on him. So he stacks Cleaver quickly, he stacks press the attack quickly, he takes Blazer and King, gets double procs on it very often, and so that makes him not only a very good bully in lane, but also a pretty good threat to take out tanks, and he can kite pretty well. So he can get away from a lot of those tanks that are going to be hitting the backline. In addition, because he gets things like Black Cleaver, he's going to have more health. That extra 400 health is going to make him a lot beefier than other champions out there. Most other AD carries anyways, and so that's going to make him at least a little bit more resilient to champions like Akali, like LeBlanc. You know, they're still probably going to blow him up pretty quickly, but he's going to have more time potentially to react. And he has that dash, so he can dodge skill shots pretty easily. And, you know, you can take something like Ninja Tabby on him if they do get a fed assassin like a Rengar or a like a Kha'Zix or something that can buy you a little bit more time. He doesn't have to have Berserker Greaves. He can function without them because he's mostly like a spellcaster, like combo type of AD carry. He doesn't want to just sit there and just do normal auto attacks. It's nice if you can get Berserker Greaves, obviously, but you do have the option of getting something like Ninja Tabby if you really have to, or if they have like a Fed Karthus or some other like huge AP threat that's difficult to avoid, then you can get something like Mercury Treads in a huge stretch. But I think Tabby, like, that's warranted sometimes. That does actually help you out in lane, dueling the other AD carry, and it scales pretty well to deal with assassins later. Mercury Treads a little bit less so, but they can still be strong. So I think Lucian's still going to be top of the game. You know, the meta did shift around to hurt him a little bit just because you probably will be facing down things like Caitlyn more often. You know, maybe things like Jhin, Misfortune, other lane bullies, instead of just getting to pick on Xayah every game. Although I think a lot of people are still going to pick Xayah, and he's very, very good in a Xayah in the early game. So I think he's still going to have a spot near the top. Even though it's a siege meta, just because of the way that I've talked about, like how well he plays with enchanters, particularly Nami, and just how well he, you know, takes dragons and performs these other roles. I think it's okay that he's kind of short range and doesn't take towers as quickly as some of the other champs. I think he's still going to be super strong. So Lucian's still going to be the best. Just Ruin King, Black Cleaver, and then you can kind of decide from there. Usually it's Rapid Fire Infinity for maximum damage, but if you need to, you can get something utility like a GA or something if you have to as third item. Okay. Draven's still going to be really good. Draven's pretty much always going to be top 5. He is one of the champions that I talked about in my one trick video. The reason that he's up this high is he's very good against pretty much everybody in lane. You know, the only time when Draven is bad in lane is if you're bad on Draven. Like, that's pretty much it. He does so much damage in the early game, it's ludicrous. Like, he basically gets an extra 40 AD on his auto attacks. He comes to lane. I think I did the math on this. It's like he comes to lane with like 4 kills or something worth of gold on his Q, which is just absurd. So yeah, he gets 35 bonus physical damage on his axes, and it's 65% of your bonus AD. Now, I don't remember exactly what your bonus AD is early after everything that you end up taking with Doran's Blade and all that stuff, but it ends up being close to like at least 40 AD. And 40 AD is a BF sword, and that's a 1350 gold value. So that's like 4 kills, 4 300 gold kills. So he just like walks in the lane with a quad kill, level 1. That's why it can just feel ridiculous dueling this guy. So he can harass really well. He does very well with Conqueror too, because Conqueror, because his fights are so short that it doesn't matter that Conqueror falls off in like 2 or 3 seconds or whatever it is, because he just hits you once. If he hits you once more, you're going to be at like half health, and then after that you're running, because if you don't run, he's going to kill you. He's just going to run you down and kill you. And a lot of times he's going to flash and kill you also. So it's extremely dangerous, especially if they have an all-in support, or if you have an all-in support on your side. Now, those are falling off a little bit. You still see some Thresh, some Leona, Alistar, stuff like that. They'll still get picked, but I do think that champions like Sona, like Nami, and things like that are going to be stronger right now. However, Nami can be a pretty good all-in champ. If she lands that bubble and then puts an E on the Draven so that he can slow people when he's auto-attacking them, that is code red. Like, they're probably going to have to use a summoner. They're going to die. And he has really, like, she can harass too with him, so she can get people kind of low so Draven can finish them off, or at least so he's a threat to finish them off. So Draven plays very, very well with an aggressive Nami in lane too. And he just pretty much dumpsters, like, anyone that's not Lucian, Misfortune, or Jhin, he's just going to run over him in lane. So if they have a Xayah or, God forbid, a Vayne, or, you know, an Ezreal or something like that, you know, he should be up like 40 CS in the laning phase. He's just absurd. Also, those axes help him last hit. So he should be able to organically just naturally get a lot more last hits than other people just because he gets a ton of extra AD. So it's really, really hard to miss last hitting with Draven. You have to like try to miss, like if you're going to miss. So just naturally, he should be hitting more CS. He should be able to bully out the enemy, hurt them, make them miss CS. And if he actually gets a kill, we all know that kill snowballs extremely hard because he gets a ton of bonus gold. And that bonus gold is nice too because that doesn't go towards the rubber band penalty, right? So it doesn't go towards the shutdown penalties out there. You just get to keep all of that gold and they don't get it back. So very good early game aggression, tons of power. He actually scales pretty well too. I mean, it's a common misconception that Draven doesn't scale that well, but I mean, once he gets to this level 9, he basically every single attack is a crit because he gets 105% of your bonus AD extra and then he has 55 on top of that. But this, I believe this can also crit. Next basic attack to deal this much bonus physical damage. So I'm not entirely sure if that crits itself or not, but I know it applies lifesteal, which is another reason why Draven is strong because he can rush something like Bloodthirster early on and be even more powerful because you can just pretty much never trade with him. If you take a small trade, he's just going to heal up off of Bloodthirster and you're going to be sitting there like really injured. So very strong, decent attacks. You know, attack speed, as long as he keeps catching those axes, you know, he gets 40% attack speed, 60% move speed. He can snipe people out with Whirling Death. He has a nice little, you know, knock people aside, the stand aside. So if you're good on Draven, once again, you can stop things like Alistar or Rakan, Zac, all kinds of champions that are going to try to run in and dive you on the back line. You can just knock them away with stand aside. So he's got a lot of tools in his toolkit, has a ton of power. He can pressure early, get down some of those plates. Because if you force the enemy out of lane, like if you chunk them down to like half health or something, and then they're playing really scared under the tower, if they eventually have to back, they get hit really hard for taking an unfavorable back right now. Because if they back first, you're going to get one, sometimes even 2 plates before you back. So they're going to back, and not only are they going to be missing CS at their tower, but they're also going to basically gift you an extra 320 gold, which is like a kill's worth of gold. So if they back and don't die, no problem. It's like you killed them anyways. Because you're going to get 2 plates off their tower a lot of the time. So anyone that can bully people out, cause a lot of problems early, threaten towers, wave clear, all that stuff's going to be very good right now. So Draven checks off several of those boxes. He's the most oppressive laner, especially if you're really good with him, especially if you have a competent support or the jungler camps for you or whatever. He's just disgusting. And if he gets a couple of kills, he might just be able, if you have a good support, you can just, it doesn't even matter if the jungler comes down anymore because you can just 2v3 him probably. So yeah, super, super dangerous champion. Very, very, he's the best one trick in the book, I think. It's either him or Twitch. And yeah, he's going to be very strong. So I think most people are starting Bloodthirster, then going Stormrazor. You can go Stormrazor next if you want the Bloodthirster as you're building it up. Once you get that extra little bit of lifesteal, then that does give you a pretty big advantage in the laning phase. Stormrazor, once it's complete, gives you that bigger first hit. You know, in my research, it looks like most people rush Bloodthirster, but either one is fine. So you get one, then you get the other, and then Rapid Fire Cannon and Infinity Edge after that. If you make it that far, most games will be over by then. If you're a pretty good Draven player, but very, very strong pick. The next one that's risen up quite a bit in these ranks since I did the last AD carry tier list, which was a while ago. It was like 8.20, so I'm going to try to be more consistent with those. Is Sivir. So Sivir kind of came out of nowhere during Worlds. A lot of people weren't expecting the Sivir, and the main thought process behind Sivir is really good when AD carries aren't that great. And what I mean by that is you have so much utility as Sivir because you have the best wave clear in the game as AD carry, and you have an ult button on a short cooldown, which not only keeps you safe, but also allows your enemies to be safe to escape unfavorable situation, and allows your goon squad to run in and kill people. So if you have something like, you know, an Akali, Irelia, Urgot, Aatrox, you know, these champions that are just ridiculous, and you get ahead at all, you can just run them right into their back line and they just die. There's probably not going to be a lot of escaping from that. Another thing that's really helpful with her is that she's so strong in team fights because you can attack the front line that's attacking you, so you can attack the tanks, and it bounces off of the tanks. If everyone's all clustered up, it bounces off of the tanks and ricochets around to everybody and just does a ton of damage. So, you know, a lot of AD carries waste a ton of their DPS because they have to hit the tank that's in front of them. It's not wasted, that's what they have to do. But they just hit the tank and he absorbs a ton of the damage. But with Sivir, you can still damage everybody else if they're relatively close because of this. And she's she's very good at sieging too, because if they try to defend their tower when you're sieging, what is that?
Times.
Thanks, dear. But if they're trying to defend a siege, and I'm sure everybody's kind of experienced this before, all those ricochets just start adding up. You know, you're just going to be like tick, tick, tick. You're just constantly going to get poked down by the ricochet over and over and over again while you're trying to defend this. Even if you dodge all the boomerang blades, this is still going to be just wearing you down over time. And so she's very good at attrition fights around towers. So she's deceptively a good sieger, even though she kind of has low attack range with 500. It just pokes people off of that, especially once you start getting critical strike and these things start critting as they go through. So it not only clears the wave instantly, but it also adds in some extra harass to anyone that's standing anywhere close to the tower. So I think that positions her very well. She's got really good wave clear. She can put it into the tower early. She has some defense with her spell shield. So that's pretty good if someone's trying to engage with like a Nautilus or a Rakan to a lesser extent. If Rakan goes in with his RW combo, it's still going to knock you up. The same is true with Alistar when they changed Spell Shield last year to only block one spell, period, even if they're both like almost at the same time. But, you know, you can just always push in. If you fall behind early, you can still in the mid game just go around, farm everything. Puts a lot of pressure on side lanes. She's just very strong, and so she's just going to go Storm Razor, Rapid Fire Cannon, Infinity Edge. Now, Storm Razor is particularly good, too, with Ricochet, because it guarantees a crit, which means that every single one of those Ricochet hits is going to crit as well. So that does a lot of AoE damage, especially to waves, off of just one item. So that's another thing that's kind of risen her to prominence. So yeah, just the standard Storm Razor, Rapid Fire, Infinity. So the major advantages of her are, once again, excellent wave clear, good harassment under tower, really good safe champion once you get to 6. Also really good with the goon squad. So if you have a really fed, bruiser of some sort in another lane, then you can definitely run up and start fights. So she's one of the best AD carries at starting fights in that sense, because it's not even a skill shot. It's not like you have to hit an Ashe arrow or a Varus ult. You just press R and your whole team runs at somebody who's out of position, and they're probably going to die. So excellent utility, excellent harass, really good scaling, particularly for team fights. So I think Sivir is someone to definitely watch out for. Okay, Twitch is another person. Twitch is almost always top 5. If he's not top 5, he's always top 10. He just has a kit that just few people can match. I mean, it's just overloaded, ridiculous kit. If you've never heard me talk about Twitch on here before, I'm sure y'all have experienced the Fed Twitch too. And if you've never stopped and wondered, well, why exactly is he so ridiculous? Well, there are several things. Number one, his ultimate gives 20 extra AD to start, which is a very, very good value. I mean, that's over 600 gold. That's like 650 gold value. And then it goes up from there. But the big thing is he gets 850 range on his attacks. That's more than a lot of casters' spells. So people don't realize this, because you see bad Twitches all the time open up in like hand-to-hand combat with like Darius or something from invisibility. But the really smart Twitches will actually wait and then open up from almost max range, and no one can hit him. Even like a Jinx, I think, that has maxed out rockets can't hit him. I don't even think a Kog'Maw can hit him with his maxed out, W range. So I know Tristana can't hit him with her max range. So he shoots so far away. It's just so hard to deal with this guy. Hey, thanks so much for the sub. I appreciate it. Straight yes. But super range. Also, it hits everybody. So it just makes him superior in team fights. Because he's hitting everybody at a super high range. He's also getting this bonus AD. He's also applying his passive, which does true damage and poison. And once he stacks up all this passive on everyone, then he can use his Contaminate, which is going to deal, 270 plus, 210% of your bonus AD. So you're looking at least probably 500, 600, maybe 700 AoE damage on everybody, in addition to your autos, in addition to the poison just naturally ticking for an extra 180 true damage once that's fully stacked up. Now that's like high level, but either way, massive AoE damage is the main takeaway there. Blade of the Ruined King also applies. So if you have Blade of the Ruined King with this, you're hitting everybody from 850 range. Not only is it dealing, the normal auto attack damage, getting bonus AD, applying the Venom, and allowing you to do a cast for AoE damage, but it's also using Blade of the Ruined King. So he's just healing a massive amount, and he's dealing a ton of percentage health damage as it goes on. Now, yes, it does less damage as it hits per enemy, right? It goes down to 40% damage, but that doesn't affect the poison. That doesn't affect the Blather and King stacks. That's only his normal damage. So it makes him really, really strong when he has this ult going, and it's on a 90-second cooldown, so it's a very short ultimate. So it's really strong. Now, pro tip with Twitch, and I see amateur Twitches mess this up all the time, do not open up and fight somebody through a minion wave with the spray and pray. Because what people don't realize with Twitch is that the minions decrease the damage that you're going to take. So if you shoot through 5 minions to try to hit the enemy AD carry, you're actually doing less damage than if you just normally auto-attack them. Because you're only doing 40%. So it's not going to matter that you get that bonus AD if your total damage is down, 60%. Right? Because you're only doing 40. So I see so many Twitches do that. Do not fight in a minion wave where you're shooting through minions. You need to create space, come at them from an angle, or just wait until the minion wave is gone, and then attack them so that you get the full value out of it. Because sometimes it can just look like Twitch is doing no damage when he does that at like level 6, and it's because he isn't doing any damage because of that. So just keep that in mind. If you play Twitch, make sure it's open field where you're fighting them. Okay. Also, Braum has fallen out of the meta, and Braum was one of the best champions against Twitch. That's going to help him out a little bit too. And his invisibility. That's the final thing that really sets him apart, because his stealth is so long. It's 10 seconds at level 1. You could like go to the store and grab a drink and come back and still be stealth. Not that extreme, but it's what it feels like. He can just be anywhere on the map. Like, he could stealth in mid lane and probably make it down to bottom lane. So he gets a bunch of extra movement speed as well. And that's huge. So in team fights, he can be there just hanging out in stealth just wait until the enemy uses all of their major CC. Wait until you see the Leona do her thing, or like Rakan use his engage or whatever. You wait until you see that, and then you pop out of stealth and blow everybody up. So that's what really smart Twitches will do, is they'll just kind of hang out, in the shadows, just waiting for that right moment. And then as soon as everyone like uses their CC, then he opens up and everybody's dead. Because if you don't stop him within a couple of seconds when he opens up and starts firing, you're probably dead, because he's getting extra attack speed on top of that, and he's going to have lethal tempo. So it's just disgusting. So not only is he a great team fighter, but he's sneaky. He can also get assassination kills if he gets ahead. So if he gets 2 or 3 kills, he's ahead of the enemy AD carry. They try to go like split bot lane and get some extra farm, and the tower's not there anymore. He just like walks up invisible and kills him. And how often does that happen in solo queue, where someone's out of position trying to get some farm without proper vision or protection? Pretty much always. So he can just run around and basically just farm idiots all day, which there's a lot of those floating around. But just people who aren't aware of what's going on. So he just really exploits people that have bad macro. He's very good in team fights. He scales extremely well because of, just all of the factors I mentioned earlier. Great itemization with Blather and King. Hurricane's also fantastic on him, because each time he attacks, it's going to hit those bolts as well. Now, I think the range on Hurricane is a lot less than his like 850 range. I think it caps at like 550. I'm not sure about that. But either way, he's going to be applying the poison and the bolts, and each one of those bolts also applies your poison. It also applies your Blather and King stacks. So he just has really sick itemization, both at first item, second item, and third item, going into Blather and King, Hurricane, Infinity Edge. Just really, really good scaling. Now, he can get bullied out early. So that's why he's a bit earlier. That's why he's a bit lower down the list, because Draven, Lucian, a lot of these champions can really lay into him. But the towers aren't going to break as early, so that's going to give him a little bit more time, potentially, to kind of catch up, maybe get a little bit of farm under the tower. We'll see. Some people argue this helps like weaker champions in the early game. I think they just get oppressed for longer because the lanes don't break and they can't get any like extra farm places. Also, Twitch is very good at roaming with his invisibility, so he can roam and make plays, after the tower breaks. So I think the tower changes are not favorable for him, but I think the fact that enchanters coming back are favorable, because if you're just staring down a Janna, you can probably just farm as Twitch, or it's a lot easier to farm against Janna than it is to farm against like Alistar sitting there staring at you, or Leona, or something like that. Those are champions you do not want to see as Twitch. But, if you're staring down Janna, maybe even Sona, if you take like Doran's shield early, and you're going to get some lifesteal. Maybe you have someone on your team that can heal you too. Maybe you've got a Nami or something on your team. You can probably like farm off against that, or there are better ways to mitigate that. Like you can take some extra lifesteal runes, or you know, just something to help you out early on. Versus like Alistar or Leona, there's like if it's Alistar Draven or Leona Draven, there's not much you can do. You're never going to farm in that lane. So I think that does help that enchanters are starting to come back because they help him scale. Obviously, if he gets something like Ardent Sensor stacks, in addition to all that other stuff, that helps him out a ton. So he scales really well with Ardent Sensor, scales really well with Zeke's. So yeah, just super high scaling champion, risky early game. You're probably going to get bodied in lane, but I think the meta shifts. The towers are bad, but the kinds of supports that are going to get played are good. So, you know, we'll see. I think he's going to be a pretty strong threat though. And then Jhin is the final one in tier 1 that I have here. Now, some people might put Jhin a little bit lower, but I think that Jhin is very good in the early game. I think he's excellent at pushing with his dancing grenade. So I still think he's a menace. Jhin traditionally has big problems with tanks, and there still aren't very many tanks going around. So he can kill squishies really easily, especially if he gets ahead. He scales really well with things like rapid fire cannon, like Storm Razor. You know, getting that extra range from rapid fire so you can trigger your 4th shot is a really big deal. Or so you can trigger a Storm Razor shot. So, you know, he can walk up, get that auto attack in, chunk out half of someone's health, and run away if he wants to. So, very good at kiting people later on in the game because his 4th shot's going to crit for him, and Storm Razor's going to crit for him, and just his natural crit is going to crit for him. So, it just allows him to almost permanently just run around the map. So, I do think that he's going to be pretty good. And he just has a nice toolkit, you know? As I said before, he's got the dancing grenade to push in, pressure towers. He's got the deadly flourish to combo if you have a support that adds any CC in there. You know, Nami hits her bubble, Leona engages, Alistar combos in. You can follow that up with the deadly flourish, which is a shockingly like long duration once you get a couple of points in this. So kind of in the mid game around like level 8, when you have like 2 or 3 points in this, it can be a big deal. Obviously, I'm pretty sure you still max dancing grenade first. But maxing this second is really nice. Follow-up CC. And not a lot of AD carries have really good follow-up CC. So that's handy. And then Captive Audience isn't amazing, but you know, it does allow you to do some extra wave clear. If someone does get caught in this, it does quite a bit of damage over time. And then of course you have Curtain Call, which is really great for finishing up people. You can still use it to start fights if you really need to as a form of engage. It doesn't do nearly as much damage as it used to if you're using it in that capacity, but it can still help catching people out. And it's a pretty short cooldown, so you're not losing that much if you have to use it for that purpose. So I think it's just a good, well-rounded champion. Not going to be as great in really long fights, but in really quick fights where you're able to blow someone up pretty quickly, then he's still going to be a strong choice. So I still like him. I think that Dark Harvest works really well on him. Now, Dark Harvest, if you get resets, that can also apply to your ult. So if you kill somebody with your ult after a second and a half, you can get another Dark Harvest stack if you hit someone else below 50%. So that is a pretty good new addition for him, is those Dark Harvest resets. And then obviously you can trigger it off of things like Dancing Grenade in the laning phase, you know, or your W. There's a lot of different options there. So I think that's pretty nice. Then he has really good sustain in lane with Taste of Blood and Ravenous Hunter early on. And you can just get Mana Flow Ban and Absolute Focus. Now he gets Swiftness Boots, so he can get kind of the maximum in-combat movement speed with his ult. So he can get around and make sure that he hits people or kite people pretty well. And he just goes for the Storm Razor Rapid Fire Infinity Edge. So I think he's in a very good position right now. He might deserve to be slightly higher. Maybe some people put him ahead of Twitch, perhaps. I still think that Lucian and Draven are probably the top tier bullies, but Jhin is legit right now, particularly with that new Dark Harvest, because you can trigger it once again off of things like your ultimate, most notably, but also off of your W from really long range. You can snipe people out with it, and off of your dancing grenades if you're sieging against people, and it bounces around. So I think that all of these champions are going to be pretty strong in the early game. Now, moving down a little bit here into Tier 2, we have Misfortune. Misfortune, very similar to Jhin. Great early game bully. Functions really well with Dark Harvest. Now, they did nerf Dark Harvest recently. So when I made the Passionos video, it used to do 50 base damage, and now it only does 40, which is still a lot. And the scaling is 5 extra damage per soul instead of 8 damage per soul, which is fine. and it still has an okay AD ratio. The big thing is that it still resets after 1.5 seconds. You can trigger it, like in team fights, you can trigger it multiple times. And so, you know, anything triggers it too. So if someone's low, you know, and your Dark Harvest is up after you kill somebody in a fight, after 1.5 seconds, you can just press Make It Rain on somebody, you know, potentially snipe them out and kill them. Bullet time, you know, the channel time on this is 3 seconds. So if you bullet time and instantly kill somebody with it, and someone else sits in it for the next 1.5 seconds, then you can trigger it again and hit them again. You could maybe get 3 off of it if it's like you actually literally killed somebody with the first round of bullets. But I think most of the time you're only going to be able to get 1 extra reset off of it. But then, like I said, you can drop the Make It Rain on them to get that extra reset after that if you want to. So yeah, I mean, she's still amazing early on. The Dark Harvest going to give you extra poke. Dark Harvest plus, you know, if you double up, like once you get Duskblade, if you, you know, kill a minion, bounce that off of a minion for the crit, you know, you're level 9, like you're sieging somebody, right? You bounce this off, it kills the minion for the guaranteed crit and the extra damage, plus the Duskblade proc, plus the Dark Harvest proc, once they fall below 50% or whatever. I mean, it could literally one-shot somebody at a certain point, like a squishy support, you know, a Janna or something like that. It does a ton of damage. So if you're really good at aiming these Qs, she's one of the most impressive champions, you know, in the game, in the laning phase, right? Because she gets basically 1150 sort of poke range with starting with a 7-second cooldown that goes down from there. And it does a ton of damage, especially if you kill the minion and it bounces into them. I'm sure we've all seen this before. So that makes her very impressive, very good. She can also get back to lane really quickly after she backs, which is actually really, really important now to make sure you don't lose plates, or to make sure that you can pressure the enemy and maybe get more plates, or to rotate to Dragon to go help your team with Dragon after you push the wave. So being able to move around is pretty good. It does give her some extra attack speed if you have to kill people, you know, start auto-attacking them in fights. Usually you want to kill them with your spells, so you want to channel your ult or just like auto plus double up and potentially kill them. That can be pretty good. Make It Rain is excellent for harassing under tower. Now, someone told me that like Cheap Shot in and of itself triggers off of 1 Make It Rain. I'm not entirely sure that's true. I think it specifically says on the spell that the same spell can't trigger it. But I don't know if it means like the same instance of the spell. So this actually, you know, rains down every 0.25 seconds. So the first rain might open up the target for Cheap Shot and then the next rain triggers it. I'm not sure. I'll have to test it. So that could be really good. Either way, you know, if you Make It Rain on somebody, you're probably going to be able to hit them with an auto or at least double up off a minion to hit them. Something like that, and it's going to be able to trigger Cheap Shot. So Dark Harvest puts Cheap Shot's pretty good on her. She can take Ulti Hunter if she wants to, and that's going to give her more opportunities to ult. So very good lane bully. Very, very good in team fights. I mean, this will completely wipe people up, especially if you start getting Dark Harvest resets on people. If any of your allies are also running Dark Harvest, you getting them low with bullet time, and then like other people getting Dark Harvest resets off of stuff can be pretty sick. So like if it's Misfortune Xayah, which is one of the most impressive lanes I can think of right now, you know, and they're both triggering Dark Harvest off of people that are below 50%. You know, if Xayah ults and then Misfortune ults and they both like just chain together all these resets on Dark Harvest, like it'll just be disgusting. So that'd be pretty fun to see. But yeah, really good with anyone that has lockdown, especially AoE lockdown. So she'll probably be pretty good if, what's her name, Nico ends up being a support, which I'll do a separate video about that soon. Sadie's just like, pet me. She keeps like running her head into my hand, right, Sadie? But anyways, lots of good combinations. Obviously, Xayah is a very good one. Something like a Rakan who could initiate and CC everyone is pretty good. Leona is pretty good. Even like a Nami bubble plus a Nami wave or something can be pretty good. So she has a lot of really good combinations. So yeah, she's not going to be as good in like a one-on-one duel as someone like a Xayah, you know, when Xayah has 2 or 3 items, or a Lucian or something like that. That's not really her style. But she does have a nice, unique combination of early game bully, late game team fighter. And I think that can be very strong in this meta, particularly in solo queue, where people just don't respect just how much damage she does in team fights, and they'll all group up in the jungle or something and just get completely murdered. So I think that she does have a spot. You know, she might deserve to be up in tier 1. You know, you could maybe put her up there instead of Jhin. I just have Jhin up there a bit more because I think he's better at consistently being able to kite and like one-shot squishy people later on in the game. But I think they have similar early game bully potential, and I think that Miss Fortune's better at team fights versus Jhin is a little bit better at skirmishes. But they're both really good. Okay, Xayah I have down here, and this is probably one of the most controversial rankings that I have. I have her at tier 2. A lot of people have her at tier 1. A couple reasons for this. Number one is I think the bullies are back. Lane bullies are going to be very strong. You're going to see a lot of Lucian. Lucian completely bulldozes her early, I think. Jhin is very good against her. Miss Fortune's good against her. Draven's good against her. She's just going to get dumpstered in the laning phase, I think. And, you know, you might even start seeing more Caitlyn's up there, more Sivirs. Even they can kind of bully her out early on. Like a very good Caitlyn will just ruin her in the laning phase. We'll talk about Caitlyn here in a little bit. But she's still good. I mean, she did get some nerfs recently. She still has a ton of power in her kit overall. I looked at Ginsu's a little bit more. I had thought it was going to be a massive nerf. But after looking at the actual items that someone like Xayah is going to buy, she's not going to have a lot of AD, you know, or a lot of AP for that matter. A lot of her stuff is going to be on hit. So the fact that you're losing like 15% of your bonus AD, remember that's only bonus AD, not total AD, that was on the previous Ginsu's. And I don't know if that's in here or not. 15% on that. Let me just pull it up here real quick. Look at it. So it used to give, you know, when it was fully stacked, 15% bonus AD, 15% bonus AP. She's not going to have that much AP with most builds. Now, like, later in the game, if you get, like, go Nashor's Death Cap or something like that build's not going to be as good as it was. But the bonus AD, I mean, what did you get? You got Stormrazor, which I think is, like, 60 AD. They lowered it. It used to be 70. I'm not sure if it is still 70. I don't think it is anymore. Yeah, it's 60 AD. So you'd go Stormrazor, then Ginsu's most of the time. So, you know, Stormrazor's going to give you 60. Ginsu's is going to give you 25 AD. So that's 85. And then with, like, your runes and everything else, you know, you might get to 100 so you can evolve your Q. But you don't get much more after that. You know, you're going to get, like, Hurricane or Rapid Fire Cannon or something like that. I think she would usually go, like, Stormrazor, Ginsu's Hurricane was, like, a really common build. And so you're only going to be losing 15 AD, and in exchange for that, you're getting at least 10% armor penetration and 10% magic penetration. So your spells do quite a bit of base damage, right? Your passive does a lot of base damage, and your W does a lot of base damage. And so it's going to help those do a lot more, and your auto attacks are still going to be doing, you know, 10% more damage. So if you're autoing them for like 200 damage a pop, if you have 100 bonus AD, you know, and your base damage is like 100, it probably doesn't scale up that high, but either way, like, let's just say you have 175 auto attack damage, right? Like 10% penetration is going to be 17.5 extra damage, right? So that's more than the 15 AD you were losing. Now, that doesn't take into account all the scaling and stuff like that, but the fact that it's magic penetration and armor penetration is very good. Now, you are losing some of your on hit again. Now it's just a flat like 15 on hit damage. You know, whereas before it was, I think, 5 and 5, and then it had like a 0.1 ratio or something like that on it. So you are losing a little bit of the on hit as well, but once again, you're not going to be getting a lot of AD. You're not going to be getting a lot of, you know, AP in these builds. So you're going to be losing, like, it's going to basically break even. If you have 100 bonus AD, you know, and it was doing 5, and then that extra percentage on there, it's a little bit less. It's, you know, like maybe you're doing 20 before, and maybe now you're doing 15 on hit damage. But the penetration's good. And then once again, when you stack this up 6 stacks, oh, that's where you were getting the extra 15% bonus AD and AP. So overall, you know, it's 200 gold less, which does mean you can buy it a lot faster, and you get the penetration, the double penetration, which is great. And it still has the Ginsu's Rage type of thing. So I think it's still going to be like really good on her. I thought it was going to end up being terrible and unusable, but after looking at it a bit more closely and thinking about the kinds of items you get with her most of the time, then I think it still is going to be pretty strong. So I think you'll still end up getting that. It is a very slow item though, and it requires like very careful usage. So if you're the kind of person that just runs up and starts auto-attacking somebody with no stacks, it's going to be pretty bad. You're going to get blown up. Like, you have to be smart enough to say, hey, I'm going to charge this up a little bit on a minion wave, and then I'm going to start a fight. Or I'm going to, like, charge this up on some, like, monsters in the jungle, and then I'm going to go fight. Something like that. And a lot of people in solo queue just don't even think about that. You know, they just walk up and just hit whoever. So, you know, it still has that problem. But so I think she's, you know, she's taken down a little bit. The itemization is still okay. It's just that the early game matters so much more right now. She does have decent wave clear with her Q early on, so she's got that. But I just feel like she's going to be able to get bodied by a lot of other champions. And, you know, like I said, she's kind of confusing for a lot of people to use. They don't stack up the Gensus properly. They'll ult in and just basically suicide on the back line. They don't use her ult properly. They don't dodge stuff with her E. She's kind of like just a better version of Vayne. I think she is more successful than Vayne, and I like having her on my team a lot more than Vayne, but realistically, it's a similar profile, right, where it's going to take 2 items for you to get going most of the time, and you're going to have a pretty hard time in the early game. Now, if you can consistently hit your Ws and get, like, isolation missile hits on people, that's another thing, is a lot of people use those missiles in traffic and not get the maximum damage, instead of waiting until, like, the wave is thin before you start a fight, so those missiles do a lot more. But yeah, I mean, I think she'll still be strong. She is definitely still one of the stronger champions at 2 or 3 items and beyond. One of the best hyperscaling champs in the game. It's just, you know, she has so many tools that have a lot of potential that, you know, a lot of AD carries just can't handle to the maximum power. So, you know, I think she will still be very strong. I just think that she's just harder to, like, get to that full reliability. And I'm actually going to take that reliability down quite a lot. I had her at a 4 on reliability, but after talking about this stuff, I think she's a lot less reliable than I'd initially thought when I wrote those up. So, still going to be strong, but not as oppressive as she once was. She's still going to get picked all the time, but I think there are better choices in some cases. Okay, Xayah, going to be a very strong choice right now. Like, she doesn't have the highest win rate in the world, but she does have very good wave clear with her feathers early on, very good zone control. So it's really hard to dive into her and fight. Very good with Rakan. Now, Rakan might fall off a little bit. I still think he's probably pretty good, but he can have a hard time in lane if he gets bullied by things like Nami, like Sona. Pre-6, that can be a little rough. But Xayah does have great wave clear. You know, at 2 or 3 items, she is a huge threat. Obviously, very good in team fights. But has shorter range, like 525 range. So she's okay. I would say she's one of the better team fighting AD carries, sort of like a Twitch in that regard, but a little bit less consistent. You have to place the feathers really well and like play around the enemy to make sure that you land them properly. So there's a lot of skill involved with her. She does have a get out of jail free card that Twitch doesn't have with her ultimate. You know, she can dodge a lot of things. So a really well played Xayah could surpass a Twitch potentially, but Twitch is much longer range. He's invisible, and he's just a lot easier to use. You just, like, the only, like, tough part about Twitch is not dying in lane, and then not opening up in melee combat like a fool. Just waiting for the right time invisible to open up max range, and then you just right-click and delete the whole enemy team. I think Twitch is a lot more reliable. But Xayah is still going to be strong. Okay, the next 2, I think, potentially could be tier 1, but I have them down lower because I think they are one of the hardest AD carries to play, or at least that I see. I'll put it this way, they shouldn't be the hardest, especially Caitlyn, but for some reason they are. So let me go on my Caitlyn rant here just for a second. Anyone that's watched the stream probably know this. Like, Caitlyn should not be that hard to play at a competent level, but for some reason she is. And the main reason is people just don't use her traps correctly, or don't use them at all. There are so many Caitlyns that I see that don't put any traps on the ground. And yeah, I really don't get it. I mean, she can store up to 3 traps early at once, and they recharge every 30 seconds. You should always have, and they last for, I think they last for, yeah, like 30 seconds. They last for a long time. So they recharge every 30. It is affected by cooldown reduction, so you could get even less recharge time. You're not going to get a lot of cooldown reduction as her. You should always have at least a couple of traps on the ground. You know, and that's really what defines a good Caitlyn player, is you'll have a trap in front of you, and you will play around that trap so that people can't engage on you, so that Alistar, Leona, Rakan, these champions can't jump on you. You put a trap in front of you wherever you're farming, set up shop, and then they can't get on you. Especially if you start pushing them into their tower over and over again. So you just use your Q, clear the wave, push them in, put those traps up, and then just keep auto-attacking them over and over again. You got to watch out for jungle ganks if you do that, but it's really strong. And if your support hit CC on them, you put a trap on top of that. So, you know, if your Nami bubbles somebody, you should put a trap on top of that immediately, and then combo. That's also important. If someone steps on a trap, don't just auto-attack once. If you can help it, you know, you need to try to auto and then net backwards. You'll hit them with your net, and as you're netting backwards, you throw your Q at them, because you can do that animation while you're going backwards. You can have your Q charging up, Q them, and then you get one more auto, like empowered auto after that. That's how you do a Caitlyn combo. Or just add it like a super bare minimum. You drop your trap, auto, Q, auto. But I see so many Caitlyns, like either they won't drop a trap at all when someone gets CC'd, or they'll drop a trap and just land like one empowered auto attack and that's it. Whereas really, you got to get that net combo down. You got to get the auto, net, Q, auto. Now, that's not always possible if there's traffic, you know, if like minions are in the way. But, you know, like I said, you can at least land a trap, auto, Q, auto. Yeah, a lot of people just don't do that correctly. I've seen so many times where Caitlyn's won't have any traps on the map and all that. And so she shouldn't be hard to play, but for some reason she is for a lot of people. And you also need to be auto-attacking the enemy a lot if you're playing Caitlyn. That's the whole point, is she has 650 range early. So if you're just standing at max range, just trading last hits, you know, with the Kaisa or with the Twitch or whatever, and you're just having a farm off, that's really, really bad. You have to put the pressure on them. Caitlyn is an early game pressure champion. You need to be poking them out of lane and taking the tower plates as fast as possible. And that's why I think she has the potential to move up a lot in terms of overall priority, just because towers matter so much. Whenever siege comps are really good, whenever towers are the most important thing in a meta, which I think they are right now, Caitlyn skyrockets in overall strength. So, and I think that her itemization is getting better than it used to be. She is pretty good with Storm Razor because she has such a long range she can proc it off of. And then Rapid Fire for similar reasons. And then Infinity Edge. So she doesn't have an attack speed steroid. So that's one thing, is she doesn't really scale very well at all in terms of just sitting there trading auto attacks with people. It's terrible. But she has very good poke and very good siege. And she should have very good defense because she's got the traps to stop engage, and she's got the nets also to stop engage. So she should be good in this meta. But as to whether or not people can actually play her correctly, enemies rooted by snap trap or slowed by the net gain an additional headshot proc at 650. So, yeah. So, I mean, she should do very well, but we'll see if that actually happens. There's a lot of really bad Caitlyn's out there. I think part of it might be a lot of people that pick Caitlyn are like auto-filled AD carries that just want to play her because she's safe and she has a long range, when you should be playing something like Misfortune or Sivir if you're auto-filled. But, anyways, has potential. Probably not going to be played very well under Diamond by most people, but I think that she could do pretty well right now. Ezreal's another one, very similar to Caitlyn. Now, Ezreal is more difficult to play because you have to hit a lot of your Qs. So he's difficult in that respect. Like, it's difficult to be a good Ezreal, but it's easy to be, like, an average Ezreal, I should say. Because he's very safe. Like, you can throw your Qs and just farm from a really far distance away. You can E to jump away. But to just really hit a lot of your Qs and to make a meaningful impact in the laning phase without just getting bulldozed is tough to do. And you are going to get bodied up a lot of times by Lucian, by Draven. You know, they're just going to stand on the minion line, and if you walk up there, they're going to beat you down. So, it does make Ezreal very tough, and it takes him time to charge up his tier and to really get going. You know, he really needs Mana Immune plus Iceborne Gauntlet before he can do very much. So, he is very good. If you don't need a super powerhouse AD carry on your team, if you just need someone who can survive, you know, the Talon or whatever, he can get a lot of armor. You know, he can get Iceborne Gauntlet, he can get Ninja Tabby, and he can be very good late game. But he's probably going to be pretty bad early game. They did just update Klepto, but I'm not sure if he's going to be able to trigger it twice. Like, he's going to hit people with Q from a distance, and then it's probably going to be too dangerous to walk up and auto-attack him after that. Maybe. But I don't think it's going to help him out that much. So I think he could be good. If you're good at hitting those Qs, you want someone who's safe. He is one of the best sort of do-it-yourself AD carries because you can kind of peel for yourself with your E, your Iceborne Gauntlet, you know, auto attacks, and you can apply some pretty good pressure with your Qs. Now, they did buff his ult in terms of ability to kill people. They nerfed it in terms of wave clear, so he doesn't clear waves as fast, but it does full damage to champions now. So in a team fight, if someone jumps in and starts a fight, you know, in a Mumu or whatever, and then you can get that Ezreal ult to just go through and hit everybody, it is going to do a ton of damage. That's pretty helpful. And then also he can take towers pretty decently if you're able to push in. Then he can throw his W on the tower, auto attack, and it's going to do pretty substantial damage if you're able to chip away at it like that. So I think he can be pretty good, pretty respectable, but, you know, Caitlyn and Ezreal, very difficult to play, and if you don't play them well, they're actively really bad. Like, Draven's kind of that way too, but I feel like Draven can still be, like, pretty high impact, even if you drop an axe or two every now and then. And the rewards are much higher. So if you're, like, a super good Draven player versus, like, a really good Caitlyn player, I think you're going to be able to dominate games a lot harder as Draven. So I think you get rewarded for the difficulty a lot better as Draven. And I think that, like, an average Draven is going to be more impactful on the game than an average Caitlyn or an average Ezreal. So I think you're definitely fighting uphill with Ezreal and Caitlyn, but they can be very good for the reasons I described. Okay, tier 3. So I don't actively recommend that you play most of these champions right now, but in some circumstances they might be able to work. So Varus is probably the best, like, engage support other than, like, maybe Sivir. In that, you know, he has an ult, point click, it not only CCs one person, but in a team fight it can chain together to CC a whole bunch of different people, so that can be very handy. They did nerf, you know, he has to go Blade Ruin King and then Ginsu's, and he just doesn't do as much damage off of that build as someone like Xayah is going to do with her Ginsu's. And, you know, he doesn't have any escapes. He just basically stands still, so he's really easy to hit with skill shots most of the time. He's really easy to gank. He just doesn't have as much power as he used to, especially because they nerfed his on-hit damage with his W, and they nerfed his ability to snipe people with his Q. So he's still okay. You know, you can make him work, but I think that a lot of the items that he used to use just aren't super great on him in this particular meta. He just doesn't quite do enough, but he could still be all right. Tristana is another one where, you know, that range nerf early hurt her a lot last year. She does push really well, though, so if you're able to push the lane out, that can be good. She can get bullied really hard because of that low range, though, early on, so that's really the major concern. She can drop bombs and take towers pretty quickly if you have a really good advantage, so, you know, if you're against kind of a pushover lane, if you're against an Ezreal or a Vayne or something, and you have, like, a Nami on your team who's also able to apply pressure early and help you push to that tower, you can start chipping away at that tower pretty quickly with your bomb. And if she gets ahead and she's able to jump and successfully kill people over and over again, obviously that's going to be very strong. So if you have something like a Leona on your team and you manage to get a couple of kills, you're just going to be able to chain those kills together over and over again, because those jumps plus those resets make her perhaps one of the best snowball champions, just because she can keep doing those jumps. So she's okay. I just think there could potentially be some better choices out there. Now, Jinx is another one where, like, she does scale really well. She does have some decent wave clear. She has some range early. I just think it takes too many items to get going. So, like, you really need, like, 3 items on her. You need Storm Razor, Hurricane, and then Infinity Edge to really start popping off. And she just doesn't have a ton of utility. She does have her Zap. She does have her Chompers. So, she's okay. I just think that she doesn't quite have enough power early enough in the game. I think it's just going to take her too long to scale up. So, you can win with her. But she's just too vulnerable to ganks, too vulnerable to all-ins, in my opinion. But, you know, you can still win some games. Alright, Ashe is another one where it's like, you better hit every arrow, you know. If you're playing Ashe, like, you need to hit every arrow, and you need to be able to use your hot shot to successfully scout the enemy jungle and relay that information to your team. So you need to like hawk shot the enemy jungle and say, hey, you know, he just cleared these camps. He's probably on the top side of the map. Be careful. You know, like if you have a lot of macro knowledge and you can like use that information with hawk shot, it's good. But if you're just gonna hawk shot and then just like don't say anything to your team or like don't use that information, if you're just like, okay, they're not there, you know, then that's not going to be good. But if you can warn the top lane and say, hey, we can go more aggressive bot lane, or hey, he's not on the bot side of the map, let's see if we can push up and get this dragon, then it can be very useful. But I just think that information doesn't like translate into power as much as it should in solo queue. That's kind of tough because her damage is pretty low compared to most other AD carries. It's pretty low, and a lot of that is because she can't crit to do damage. It just does a critical slow, so she slows people for more, which is cool, but you know it's got a lot of problems. So she's okay. It's just her damage is fairly low. But if you just need a utility champion that can start a fight, you know, she can be your girl. I still think that Sivir might be a little bit better at that, but Ashe can still make it happen. And then finally, my spicy pick that I'll talk about here near the end of Tier 3. And, you know, try this at your own peril. But I heard some people talking about it. I researched it. I saw it in my game. It was actually pretty powerful the other night. Was this, like, Karthus? Now, it could get used in the mid lane, but I saw it bot lane. I know there have been more people talking about it bot lane. There are a couple of reasons why I think like things that have changed that could make this potentially viable. Okay, and a lot of this has to do with runes. So number one, Dark Harvest. So remember that Dark Harvest resets. If you kill somebody, then after 1.5 seconds, you will get another Dark Harvest proc. And so if you get something, let me just pull it up here on Pro Builds. If I still have a tab for that open, so I can show you what I'm talking about here. Now, as you can see, it's not winning a ton right now, but there's not a huge sample size at really high level play. But basically, you can get Dark Harvest. If you kill people, that works. And then the trick that people have been doing, this guy actually didn't do it, but if you get Liandry's Torment, right, and this is what some more people are trying out, it puts a burning tick on the enemy that lasts for 3 seconds. So if you kill somebody with your ult, it's going to burn. Everyone else on the map is going to be burning for that amount. So if you kill somebody and then someone else falls below 50% and then they take that extra little bit of damage off of Liandry's, it's going to trigger Dark Harvest on them again. And then if you kill that person off of the Dark Harvest and the Liandry's, it's going to reset Dark Harvest again. So potentially, you could kill 3 people off of Dark Harvest plus Liandry's. So if you get, you know, someone below 200 HP near the end, Liandry's can finish them off, and then it resets and can perhaps finish someone else off. So that's kind of it, is it can chain together like that, where it kills one person, does that extra damage, resets, Liandry's keeps ticking, and then it can potentially kill somebody else. Completely different areas of the map where it procs. So that's a really interesting interaction. It's kind of cute. You don't have to go that far out of your way. Liandry's has never been an amazing item on Karthus, but it kind of makes sense in the sense that, you know, it's going to be ticking on everybody. And they did buff Liandry's recently to where it does 4.5% damage over time. So it says it does 2.5%, but I think it does 4.5% now over 3. Like 6 or 7 if they're slow impaired. But that's one really cute interaction with Dark Harvest. You can, this person went Taste of Blood. You can also go Cheap Shot. Now, obviously, you're not going to have a ton of ways to slow them. You can use your wall to slow them in lanes to kill them. But if other people, you know, slow people, if you have a Nami on your team, or just like if you're in a team fight, they're going to be slowed by something. So you're going to get those cheap shots in. You can also do Taste of Blood if you want that. And then you're going to be able to stack up your, you're going to be able to, what is this thing called? He didn't even go for it. Eyeball collection. You're going to be able to stack up that eyeball collection pretty quickly, too. You're going to get a lot of kills and assists, usually with Karthus with the ult. And then this is the combination that a lot of people have really wanted to do for a long time on Karthus, and now it makes a lot more sense. You can go Ultimate Hunter plus Presence of Mind. to just have like tons and tons of ultimates. And the reason this was kind of awkward before is because you just got extra attack speed because of the rune stuff. But now they decoupled that, so you can get Adaptive Force twice, get your 20 AP, and then you can get whatever you want in the bottom. Magic Resist, Armor, whatever you want. But the main thing is you don't have to waste time getting that extra attack speed. And Coup de Grace is also really good because you're doing extra damage to low health targets. That means that your Leandries is doing more, and your Dark Harvest procs are also doing more. So it's not just your spells, it's all of that stuff is doing more when they're below 50%. And they're going to be below 50% a lot with your ult if you're doing well in the game. So Ultimate Hunter, I believe, lowers it by 15%. And then this lowers it by 20% per takedown. Or 10% of your ultimate's cooldown per takedown. So let's say that you open up with something like Seraph's Embrace. Where's calculator? Let's say that you are level 11, so your ult cooldown is 180 base. Now, those don't stack additively, they stack multiplicatively, so that's important to keep in mind. So I'll show you like how that actually works. So say you have 180 seconds. Let's say you have 20% cooldown reduction off of Seraph's Embrace. I don't think you can get a lot of other cooldown reduction unless you can convince your team to give you blue buffs. So you're probably only going to have 20%, which kind of sucks. You might be able to get some other like weird items and get that number down, but I think traditionally, if you go something like Seraph's Embrace or I don't remember the other 3,200 gold item that has the 20% on it, then you might be able to handle that. But so times 0.8, okay, so that's 144, and then you do that number times the Ultimate Hunter is knocking off 15%, so times 0.85, take it down to 122 seconds. And then if you get 2 resets off of this, then that's times it's taken off 0.2, so times 0.8. You know, you can get it down to about 98 seconds, which is pretty good. And if you get even more takedown, if you get even more off of this, then I mean, you could even get it to like 50% if everybody dies. You know, off of that. That's kind of like living the dream. You could probably get it down to like 50 seconds. But either way, like you're getting around 50%, you know, if you just have Ultimate Hunter, 20% cooldown reduction, a couple of procs off of Presence of Mind, you're getting in the neighborhood, then that's all reasonable. You're getting in the neighborhood of like lowering it by 50% overall, which is obviously really, really strong. So that's kind of like the premise behind like New Age Karthus and how that works, because you can get multiple resets off of Dark Harvest plus Leandries, because you're putting on everyone on the team. You get the Ultimate Hunter and Presence of Mind and Coup de Grace, so you can cast a lot of ults, deal a lot of extra damage to people below that. And then getting Eyeball Collection, you can stack that up really well too. So that's part of it. And another reason like that might be okay bot lane is because you have someone else to help protect you. Because Karthus is historically really weak against assassins, particularly in the laning phase. And so if you don't have to square off against that Talon, or you're not squaring off against LeBlanc or something like that in the mid lane, if you've got a Nami to help protect you and you're just sitting there just wave clearing and just farming up, you're just spamming all of your abilities, you get a Tear of the Goddess early, you just spam everything, and just keep pushing them into the tower over and over again. You've got your support, you know, healing you up, warding for you, all of that stuff. You're just having a farm off. That could be very, very strong. And I've even seen, I'm not necessarily recommending this per se, but remember they took away the Jungle Hunter debuff too. I saw someone doing this on mid lane Karthus, which Karthus was someone that I thought could abuse this potentially, rather. Now he was doing it, like I said, mid lane, I believe. But you could take Smite, take that jungle item. Now they did nerf how much mana regen you get off of that too, but you can get up to 8 mana per second depending on how much you're missing. So what you can do is just push them into the tower and then just sit on the edge of the river while you're waiting for the extra mobs to spawn. You know, grab a bunch of extra mana. Maybe you can go take the scuttle with your Smite over and over again. You could go farm golems while you're waiting. Just go in the jungle after you have them pushed in. Go just like drop all your mana on the golems. Use your Smite. So like you can power farm with Karthus. You can either grab the golems or grab the Gromp or grab the scuttle or something. You know, you want to make sure your jungler's not going to be super pissed about that, but I think that could work. You could even Smite Cannon Minion in your lane just to get better priority, just to push him in faster. So you are going to be giving up something like teleport or something like heal to do that. So I'm not necessarily saying you should do the jungle item kind of madness. And they don't upgrade the jungle item. They just strictly get that early game just for the mana regen and just so they can take smite and get the extra push power. And he does take objectives really quickly. You know, if you get around a dragon or a baron, you can take it really quickly. And having that extra smite could be very helpful too later on in the game. So it's weird. I'm not sure if it's worth. I mean, there's a lot of problems with Karthus because a lot of people have, you know, they'll get Zhonya's Hourglass or they'll get Hex Drinker or they'll get Guardian Angel. You know, champions like Janna, like Sona, these, you know, types of champs are going to be a lot more popular right now as they can heal people up so they don't get in that execute range potentially. But it's a lot of damage, and it's basically guaranteed damage unless they have the Zhonyas or the GA or something else. Under normal circumstances, everybody on the enemy team's taking 1,000 damage probably, at least, whenever you ult in the mid game, when you get a couple of items. So, I mean, that's scary. Basically, everyone is starting at like 50% health when Karthus is there. They just don't have 1,000 health. And if the rest of your team can just kill, you know, finish them off like that, it's very, very strong. So, he has good wave clear. Runes are awesome on him right now. If you take him bottom lane, it clears up his assassin matchups early. He's probably going to force a farm off in a lot of these cases. And he scales super hard later on in the game. Yeah, there are items that counter him, but he's someone that you definitely have to deal with later on. He's definitely putting in some damage. Like, there's this one game, like, he was in it. He wasn't even doing that great, this Karthus that I saw that did it in one of my games. I was very skeptical of it, and I was like, man, this guy's really doing a lot of damage. I forgot how long the game was, but he had like 10 kills, and he did like 55,000 damage or something. And the Katarina on the enemy team that was like 18-2 or something like that did like 40,000 damage. And she was like, how did you do that much? He was like, I press R with these runes, pretty much. So, you know, I'm not entirely saying that everyone should go out and do this, so take this with a grain of salt, but this is kind of the latest spice build in the bot lane that's come about because of these rune changes and the reasons I just described. So it might be worth considering, especially if your team has all AD and you really need an AP in the bot lane. You know, you've got a Yasuo middle, you've got whatever, Camille top, and you've got Kindred in the jungle. You know, you need an AP threat. Karthus might be a decent choice, especially if he just gets to sit there and farm. You know, if it's against like Vayne, Janna, or something like that, and you can just put him in the tower the whole time, why not? You know, just go farm it, especially like if you have a gank-heavy jungler. You know, you've got a Xayah or something on your team, and he's going to be cool with you taking some of those golems or the Gromp every now and then or whatever, taking scuttles. Hell, you can even go take the dragon by yourself if you have smite. You know, your jungler's on the top side of the map, goofing around, camping top lane, not doing anything. And you have the lane pushed in, and you're like, hey, and their jungler goes up there to fight him. You can just say, hey, let's just go do dragon real quick and just do it and smite it. Dragons are worth a lot more now too, so that is an option. You know, if your jungler just like refuses to prioritize dragons, you can just do it yourself. As long as it's safe, as long as you have priority, you have good vision and stuff like that, you might be able to just do it yourself. So a lot of interesting options here. So yeah, the build is just Dark Harvest, Cheap Shot, Eyeball Collection, Ultimate Hunter, Presence of Mind, Coup de Grace, then just Sork Boots. I like Archangels. You can take Ludens. That's the name of the thing I was forgetting about earlier. I just think that like he's not really that much of a poke champion. Like Ludens is okay, but I'd rather Archangels gives you way more AP as the game scales up. I think it's going to give you at least like over 100, and it gives you a really nice shield. So when you go into combat, you throw up that shield, it gives you like 1,000 extra health or something. Maybe the shield's not that big, but it's a very big shield. Gives you a lot of extra effective health to let you stay up longer, you know, get some more defile damage in, hit a few more Qs before you die. So I like Archangel a lot more, and that just allows you to pressure like nobody's business. You're just never going to run out of mana with Tear of the Goddess, and then the your E gives you back a bunch of mana whenever you last hit minions. So you might actually be gaining mana whenever you kill minions with Tear of the Goddess and the Defile effect. So, and they buffed his ratio a while back too. It used to be 0.6, now it's a 0.75. So they've been giving him a couple of like little bumps every now and then, and I mean, he does a lot of what AD carries do. He takes objectives really quickly. He doesn't take towers that quickly, although they're easier to take now once all the armor and stuff falls off. But he's definitely worth considering. You know, I thought he was pretty troll at first, but I like went and researched it a little bit, and you know, it might be good. It might be good. So, you know, we'll see. So that's why I have it as my spice pick. It could be, I don't know if I'd put it in tier 1. It could be as high as like the bottom of tier 1 maybe, or maybe into tier 2. I'm not sure. I just haven't seen it enough, and it's weird. But I think it deserves a little bit of spice there. Okay, and finally, honorable mentions. I really would not run these champions unless you just don't care if you lose. I mean, Callista has been really bad for a long time. She can be good early, but she's best like with those hard engaged tank champs, and she just does not take towers quickly at all because she gets reduced AD. A lot of her kit is predicated on stacking these spears, which do not stack into towers. She's extremely hard to play. She's just been nerfed too much, is what I think. But, you know, if you want to play her, go for it. But just don't be sad if you lose. Swain is another one. Now, Swain actually might be an okay choice. We did get destroyed by a Swain yesterday. If you have a really good like fight lane, you know, you have like a Xayah or a Leona or something like that, then Swain can be good. He's not that great with enchanters because he can't really use Ardent Censer that well. He doesn't use Zeke's that well, so it has to be someone that's like doesn't have to buy those items. So ideally with like a Xayah would be perfect, because then if you like snare them back, she can root them and blow them up, or you know, there's a lot of nasty stuff that combination can do. So with Xayah, you know, maybe he could be tier 3 or something, but he takes a while to come online. He requires Rod of the Ages. He does have really good CC. He has good sustain. He has really good wave clear if he gets enough mana to pull that off. So he's respectable. He's respectable. I think I might actually put him above the Callista there, because I can definitely see some comps where maybe maybe you need an AP bottom. You don't really want to try the Karthus thing, or you need like also like a tanky type of champion because everyone on your team's squishy. Maybe Swain. And then Ziggs. I haven't tried Ziggs again, but I've thought about him as a supporter, as an AD carry, because of his execute on towers. So not a lot of people are talking about that. I don't know if that's enough to bring him back. Ziggs was like kind of in the meta for like sort of for like a month, from like 2016 to 2017, when everyone was crying that it was like the death of AD carries. Yes, they did that before last summer. It's a thing that comes around like once every year. But he does a lot of extra damage to towers. So his basic attacks do, you know, whatever this is, extra bonus damage, and it's doubled against structures. So he gets an extra 0.6, an extra 40, whatever towers. I mean, he's a tower-taking machine. That's his thing. So, you know, if you can just get in early, I mean, maybe you could go tier and Seraphs on him. You know, I'm thinking that, like, the... why do I blank out on, like, the mage items because I just don't get them a lot. But the thing, like, the Lost Chapter, that's what I'm thinking of. They made that so much more expensive before you get your mana benefits out of that, and Catalyst is kind of expensive too at 1,200. Maybe you just go tier and just spam spells, and then just figure it out later. You know, you can get your Archangels later, which is pretty good. So maybe you could just rush tier and then just spam Bouncing Bombs, just push them in as hard as you possibly can, and then just, like, keep proccing Short Fuse on the tower. And then this is the big one here. Satchel Charge, 25%. Execute. That's before the last plate's even off, and this would not be affected by plates. So, you know, it doesn't matter if that tower has 500 armor, you still execute it, because it's basically true damage to a tower. So, yeah, if you just get the tower down to whatever that number is, like, maybe 1250? I think it's 1250. So, like, they can have like one and a fourth plates left, and you can still just like boom, blow up the tower. You blow up the tower, go to another tower, it's on. So he pushes really well, he pokes really well, he blows up towers like a madman. Pretty good zone control with his Hexplosive Mines, and then pretty good damage, you know, in a team fight. So if you have someone that can hold people still, you got a Nico on your team, you got an Amumu, you got maybe a Rakan or whatever. You drop that Inferno Bomb, it's going to be doing a lot of damage. You might even be able to go like Dark Harvest on Ziggs. Now, I could see a scenario where people might go something like Dark Harvest and then just take like, you know, just do the Karthus special. Just take Ultimate Hunter, and then you can, you know, go into the other tree too and get Presence of Mind and Coup de Grace. Because his ult's pretty powerful. I mean, it's very similar to a Karthus. It's not automatically going to hit everyone, but it's going to hit a lot of people in a team fight. And you can also use it to, like, clear side waves if it has a really short cooldown. So I'm not really sure. I'm not sure if people are on board with that yet or not, but that was just something that I immediately thought about when they were talking about towers being so much more valuable. You kill a tower, I mean, it's like 1450 gold if you get first blood on a tower after you kill all the plates. So, I mean, people are still running other stuff on him. I honestly think, I mean, he has the poke potential for Dark Harvest, so... You know, another thing is like a weakness of Ziggs, kind of like Karthus, is he's very weak against assassins, and he doesn't rotate very well, but who cares if you're bot lane? You know, you might even be able to take the jungle item on him. I don't think it's as good on him as it is on Karthus, because Karthus can actually jungle, like, sort of, you know, with Smite, because he can just spam that Q, it does a lot of damage, he can turn on Defile, and yet, so Smite kind of makes a bit more sense on Karthus, but, like, it would give you a ton of mana regen early. Same thing as Karthus, you just push him in, just stand on the corner of, corner of the jungle or corner of the river. If you're on bot side, if you just stand, you know where your tower is, and like you can enter the jungle where the tri-bush is, all you have to do is just stand right there, right next to the lane, and it counts. And you get your crazy mana regen. That counts as jungle. So you can just stand right there and farm if they're close to your tower and just get all the get it all back. Now it's tougher if you're on top side. If you're on the red side, right? Because you're not going to be able to walk over to your jungle as easily while you're farming. But you can still step in the river. So I think that build would be a little bit better on blue side than red side, but it could still work. So it's interesting. I'm not necessarily saying you should go play Ziggs. Once again, you know, don't misconstrue what I'm saying. But it would be interesting maybe to try out in normals. That's kind of like another spicy pick that could be legit just because he's so good at taking towers and like he's so good at wave clear. And those are two really important things right now. So... Not in the mid lane, because he's going to get murdered in the mid lane by like anything that's played there right now. But with the protection of a support bot lane, with, you know, just like really good vision, like good healing, another support that can poke with you, it could be good. Now, you're going to fall off hard late game, probably, because you're not going to have an AD carry. But he does at least take towers quickly, and he does a lot of team fight damage. So, you know, if you have enough damage on your team elsewhere, he could definitely be legit. Vayne... Excellent champion if you're looking to lose games. I mean, she's just really, really bad. Like, do not play this champion. She just is everything that this meta is not. She does not have any early game aggression. She does not take towers quickly. She does not have any wave clear. She doesn't have any extra utility. She's strictly like, hey, I'm going to 1v1 when I have 4 items, come fight me. Like, it's just strictly a worse Xayah. If Xayah is open, there's no reason you should ever pick Vayne. Xayah does the same thing. She has a lot of really good dueling powers. She just auto attacks and blows things up near the end of the game, but she also has a huge shield on her ult. She has better wave clear with her Q. She has better like ability damage and sniping potential with her W late game. She has a more diverse build path. She's just much more difficult for the enemy to deal with because she can do AD or she can adjust and do AP, so she's more flexible. Xayah's just better in like every way, pretty much to Vayne. Just never play Vayne. I don't know. I am a little salty about Vayne, but it's just like every game I see her, I lose. Every game where she's on the enemy team, I win. Like, she's got a 50% win rate, so somebody's out there winning with her. But I just don't get it. I mean, if you get Gensu's plus Blade of the Ruined King, then you do start doing damage. If the fights go for like 10 seconds, you might be able to kill somebody. But if you're going to play her, you know, you better dodge every single skill shot with your tumble. You better have, like, really nice game sense and get some really good pins into the wall. You better be able to reposition and kite, you know, like a madman or madwoman. You know, you better be able to play her perfectly. And if you can do that, you would win even more games if you're playing a different AD carry. That's what I'm going to say. So it's like, if you want to put the time in to be good enough with Vayne to actually win games on her, just put the same amount of time into Xayah and you'll just win way more games. It's the same play style. It's sort of. It's basically the same thing, just way better. So it's just not worth spending time to be good enough on Vayne to catch up, just because if you can do that on Vayne, you could be even better on another champion. So if you just, you know, the only reason to play her is if you just like the Vampire Hunter theme, or you have some cool skins or something, or you just like playing the game in hard mode, you just think it's too easy and you just want to like challenge yourself. Okay, you know, play some Vayne, but it's a terrible metaphor. Heimerdinger is another one where it's like, if you're a Heimer one trick, maybe he can work, but I think that has fallen by the wayside a little bit. I mean, he does apply pressure. there's just so much that can go wrong when you play Heimer. Like, you got to hit all of your skill shots. He can just really get abused hard by some of these early game champs like Jhin, Misfortune, things like that. He's okay, but, you know, it's kind of like Vayne. If you're getting to the point where you're that good on Heimer, then you should probably just be playing something else. And Kog'Maw is just also just trash can right now. He's really, really bad. Just don't ever play Kog'Maw. It's similar to, you know, what I was talking about with Vayne, but even worse. At least Vayne can dodge things, you know, with her Q. Kog'Maw is just a sitting duck. He's going to get blown up by any assassin. He's going to get blown up by most supports that can hard engage. You know, he just doesn't do enough damage. They just nerfed all of his items, and there are just other champions that scale just as hard as he does. So he's just really not worth it. Just don't play Kog'Maw. But if you are going to play him, obviously you want to go like Gensu's Blather and King. It's like super slow and just not going to do a lot of damage most of the game. You're just going to get blown up by Stormrazor users, but that's what you have to build on him. So, anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. This is a bit of a longer one, but I know I haven't done an AD carry video in a while, so I just wanted to explain a lot of the changes and sort of what's going on there. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Have a good day.